Hey everyone, Chris here. I'm an American living out my midlife crisis in the Netherlands. And I am driving down the road in my midlife crisis car, my 9-person van. Because why get a sports car when you can just drive people around the new country that you live in? I just thought I would try an update here as I'm driving around, because I literally spend all day, every day in my car, and I have not been able to get into my YouTube studio. And by YouTube studio, I mean my attic with a table and chair and my iPhone. And you know, I started this channel with a lot of ideas about videos that I can do, and I don't know if you know, any of you watching this have done YouTube videos before, but they take an incredible amount of work to get into my attic and create some of these videos. So I thought I would just try and provide what's on my mind right now as I'm driving around. I think it's really interesting these last 4, 5, 6 weeks. I have spent an incredible amount of time, and just about every day it seems, helping Americans arrive to the Netherlands. And you know, this is part of my job that I wasn't expecting would happen. I started this business as a tour company, and I'm still doing tours, but it's also kind of morphed into this thing where I'm helping people arrive. And you know, I just wish that I had somebody like me waiting for me at the airport when we showed up with 17 bags and 4 guitars, and really tried to figure out how we were going to navigate the airport and get to our rental car and all that kind of stuff. And I'm there, I'm a friendly face saying hello at the arrivals, and I help you with luggage. I mean, yesterday I helped a family move here, and they had 2 little kids and you know, 2 adults. They had 4 carts full of luggage, and I told them to just load up the carts, and I can push 2, and you know, each of them can take 1. And I've done that lots of times before. And you know, it's just a service that I really enjoy. And then we have a great conversation about their new home, and sometimes I even help them out and say, here's your closest grocery store. I had one family a couple weeks ago that we arrived at their house a little bit early, and their makelar wasn't going to be there for like 45 minutes or an hour, and they needed to get some groceries. So I stayed and I helped them go to the grocery store and taught them how to, you know, go through the grocery store. And you know, that sounds kind of silly. It's like, okay, well, it's just going to the grocery store. But you know, things like that are different here, and things are not where you expect them to be in the grocery store. It's very different the way that they're laid out. You have to know how you're going to get your produce and weigh that, and like, there's just a lot of things that I know they were extremely grateful that the very first time they were able to go to the grocery store was with somebody who had experience. And I literally go to the store every day, so I'm more than happy to, you know, take 15-20 minutes and, you know, drive you to the store and help you through that process the first time. And I think, you know, this is a service that's much needed, especially for, you know, people that are making a relatively quick decision to exit the United States and get to a new place without all the time that a lot of people have to research their new home and figure out exactly how all of that stuff works. And you know, I'm more than happy to be a resource. And I know this is sounding a little bit like a commercial for my business, and you know, it's not really supposed to be that way. The thing behind it is just that there are so many things that work different in the Netherlands, and if you haven't had time to research it, it's really nice to have somebody that can help you through that process. Let's see what else is going on. So yeah, last week the Orange Menace, which is what I call Trump, was in the Netherlands, and it was little too close for me. He was near the airport, and I was also near the airport, and I was glad to leave the airport that day and head all the way to the other side of the country and go to Maastricht that day, which was actually another beautiful place in the country. But I was a little uneasy while he was here, and I think a lot of that had to do with the recent bombing in Iran, and I just think that there's a lot of world leaders that are not very happy with Trump right now, and I could see it being, somewhat of a safety concern. And so I was really happy when he got back on his plane and took off to wherever he was. I don't care where. I don't track his whereabouts normally, but he happened to be in my new country, and I was really not happy about it. But see, the thing is, and I just wrote about this on my Substack as well, so you're welcome to go over there and read that. And I like talking about things that I've written about because it does, I think, come out a little bit differently in the spoken word, and there's also a lot of people that just prefer turning on a YouTube video versus going somewhere and reading an article or reading a post, and I totally get that. And so as long as I can keep up both, I'm going to try and do both the writing and the videos here. But my most recent Substack was all about how it's so much more than Trump, and Trump was really the catalyst in 2015, really, when he was making his first bid for the White House, of bringing these people out, these groups of people that have hate towards other people, and making it okay and normalizing the fact that they have this hate and that they can outwardly say it and talk about it. And to me, that is the real start of my exit to the United States, was 2015 and then 2016, when he actually won the election. And all these people that supported him now felt emboldened to be able to outwardly express their hate towards other people, like LGBTQ plus community, like people that are not white, and people of color, and people that are immigrants. And there's just so many categories of hate, and it just normalized it. And that's really when things, I think, started to get considerably worse. Now, these things were always there, right? They were always in the background, and people would talk about these things in their own homes and with their families and with their friends, and how they hated certain groups of people and how they talked about. When they went out in public, they didn't outwardly, for the most part, talk about these things. And that, to me, is the real shift of the United States right now, is that Trump's winning the 2016 election and his hate towards all of these different groups of people is really what allowed the United States to get onto a path of crumbling like it is right now, and at least crumbling democracy. And I think we can really pinpoint that all the way back to that time period when all of a sudden it was okay to fly a Trump flag, and we knew that that person was hating groups of people, they're racist, they're homophobic, they're sexist in a lot of cases. I mean, just all the things that are hate in the world are represented by this group of people. And you could say, well, just move to a blue state or move to a blue city, because most of the cities in the United States are blue. And it's like, yeah, that's true, but you know what? Is that more and more it's coming out that these people are actually your neighbors. These people are at the grocery store. These people are at the gas station. And, you have to interact with these people every day. And then you have to make decisions about, am I going to support that store anymore? Because I can tell that they're people that don't agree with my core values. And to me, this is really what it comes down to, is core values. Like, if we start talking about restricting human rights, we're going to go completely different ways. And I will not stand for it. And I don't want to be associated with anybody that's interested in restricting human rights in any way. And whether that's abortion or LGBTQ rights, trans rights, a lot of people that are moving here are trans, or they have trans kids, and they're really trying to figure out how long they could stay in the United States and have it still be safe and okay for their kids. And the answer is not very long, I think. I think that we're going to see a lot of changes, and at a national level. I just don't think that anybody who is following Trump right now and making these laws, I don't think anybody is paying attention to what the real ramifications are to these problems that are happening in the United States. I really find it interesting that a lot of my business now has shifted to helping Americans arrive, and I really enjoy it. It's actually something that I'm considering, making more of my business than I had originally anticipated. And I think, this goes back to what I've said before, that I'm an immigrant living in the Netherlands, and you have to be flexible, and you have to be willing to make changes that maybe you weren't expecting. And if you come here and you start a business on DAFT or whatever other way you might be able to get here, it's not all going to go the way that you expected it to go. And if you're not up for the adventure, then I think it might not be the right thing for you to come out here and do this. There are so many things in the first few months that you have to be flexible on, and it comes down to housing, where you might not live in the city that you wanted to live in, or you might not land that job that you thought you were going to land, or maybe all the clients that you thought were going to follow you over from the United States didn't actually follow you over from the United States. So now you have to figure out what to do. And there's not a lot of resources for people, especially here on DAFT. You're not allowed to use any of the government subsidies that are offered to you, except for there are subsidies if you are not making enough money yet on DAFT, that you can get some help with health care, and then also you can get a quarterly stipend for having a child as well. So that there is a little bit of help, but compared to what the average Dutch person would receive, it's really very small. And so you have to be okay with just trying to go with the flow and figuring out new ways to do business. And I think that's not great for everybody. Some people are really going to struggle with that. And I think for me, I think this is where my autism and my ADHD really butt heads, and that my ADHD is very much like, I want something new to do every day, and I'm bored if I do the same thing every day. And my autism is like, actually, I could really use the structure of knowing that every Monday I'm going to do this, and every Friday I'm going to do that. And so it's been a little bit of a struggle for me, but I'm just trying to embrace it and understand that everything that we're doing right now is for the safety of my family. Something else that's been really interesting lately is talking with all of these Americans that are arriving, and I'm trying to ask them questions and get most up-to-date information I can get about things like housing crisis and how long it took them to get a home. And some of the people arriving have homes that we're driving directly to, and other people, they don't, and we're going to temporary stays, and maybe they're there for a week, or maybe they're there for 5 or 6 weeks. And some of these people I've stayed in contact with, and it's been really interesting to see the differences. And I would say it's about half and half, about people that arrive here and have a place to go immediately, but they've probably been renting that place for 1, 2, 3 months before they arrive. So you have to have the money to be able to do that if that's what you're going to do. And then the other half of the people are going to temporary stays and are still either looking for a place, or maybe their place isn't quite available yet that they were able to secure. And I try to ask some questions without prying too much and having to get too personal. But most of these people that are willing to answer the questions are not paying rents that are crazy expensive, like 4,000 or 5,000 euros a month. Most of these people are in like the 2,000 to 3,000, maybe 3,500 a month rent range, and almost all of them have had to provide additional funds on top of what the original rental amount per month was. So another 200, 300, 400 on top of what they were originally asking for rent. And then also a lot of them are having to put down 4, 5, 6 months of rent in advance. I know one family that had to do a full year in advance. And while it's not legal for your landlord to ask you for that, there are laws specifically against that. It is not illegal for the renter to go ahead and say, I would like to provide you with this as an incentive of, I can pay for an entire year right now, so there's no reason you shouldn't rent to me. And I think it's just been really interesting and to see, it's very much luck on whether you land a place right away or whether you struggle for a little bit before you actually find a place. But the good news is that almost everybody that is coming here has found a place. It's been a little while since I've heard a story of people arriving and then not being able to find a place to live. Again, it might not be exactly where they want it to be, but they're at least able to find something. And I think the two biggest factors that are challenging is if you have kids and if you have pets. And the last thing I want to talk about is how hot it's been. I thought that we were fairly warm and fairly humid in the Pacific Northwest, but boy was I wrong. And I thought that maybe just landing in late spring last year and not having time to adjust to the summer was a challenge, and that maybe this year with the switch from winter to spring to summer that we would be okay. But I am dying. I do not handle heat well, and it is not just hot, it's also humid. It's 26 degrees right now today. I think it's going to get up to 28. And, for those who don't know Celsius, that's like in the 80s. And this next week, it's supposed to get even hotter. I think we're supposed to get up into the mid-30s, which is pushing 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And so to help, I purchased air conditioners for each of the bedrooms. And they don't help that much, but I like to say they take the edge off. And, by that, I mean it cools it down enough that you could sleep, and at least most days. But when it gets up into the 30s and mid-30s, it becomes even unbearable at that temperature. And then we have a bigger air conditioner unit. Again, it just vents into the window. It's just a portable unit, and down in the living room area. And I would say it probably helps out by taking a little bit off as well, like maybe 4 or 5 degrees Celsius, but that makes a huge difference. And my wife and one of my kids has some health conditions that get really bad in hot weather, and so we just felt like it was the right investment to make. And if you're concerned about that because you hear in other videos or on different groups like Reddit and Facebook and things like that where there's no air conditioning in Europe, and it's like that's not entirely true. It's just not very common to have central air conditioning. You know, the buildings aren't really set up for it, and it's just not exactly, you know, something that people deal with here. And, you know, climate change is a thing. It's definitely getting warmer, and I think that it's going to be more and more of a challenge for, you know, these European countries to not have air conditioning as things change. But anyway, I just want to reassure anybody that's coming here that maybe you'll be okay without it, but there are options for air conditioning. Even if they're not great, they are actually relatively inexpensive. All 4 of our air conditioners combined were less than €1,000. So for me, to cool 4 different rooms in the house at less than €1,000 was completely worth it, and I'm really glad that we have them. But I hope that this is not going to be a record-breaking summer. The one thing about the summer is we do tend to get some thunderstorms, and I like that. It helps at least give the impression that things have cooled down a little bit. But, you know, the humidity here is really what gets you. I mean, it can be, you know, 25 degrees, and the humidity can be 60-70%. And that's when it gets, to me, really dangerous and super uncomfortable. I'm not from an area in the United States that had super high humidity like the South. And, you know, California was extremely dry. Oregon had considerably higher humidity, and I thought that it would be pretty similar to what we had in Oregon, but that just wasn't the case. So I hope you enjoyed this. I just really felt like I needed to get a video out. I think I've doubled subscribers since the last time I pushed a video out. So I really just want to say thank you so much to all of you that are watching the videos and sharing the videos and commenting and sending me a message. My email is in the info at the top of the page, and I am around for questions. If this is something that you're thinking about doing, about escaping the United States, using DAFT, finding a different way to get here, come to the Netherlands, come to a different country in Europe. I'm not extremely well versed on other countries, but I'd be happy to help you out and point you in the right direction. I work with a lot of relocators that could definitely help you decide which country's best for you, how to navigate the visa process, and, you know, get you out of the situation that you're in right now, which I think is just going to continue to be worse and worse, and it's going to escalate to a point where things get really bad. So thanks again. I really appreciate it. I promise I'll get back into the studio soon, and I'll update you on more specific things about how I'm navigating my midlife crisis in the Netherlands. Until next time, cheers.